Kia ora.
The Honourable Christopher Finlayson.
Mr Speaker, I want to begin by thanking both iwi for agreeing to the Bill's proceeding in this manner so that they can get to the Select Committee as quickly as possible. These non-Raupatu settlements, together with the settlements contained in the Waikato Raupatu Claims Settlement Act 1995 and the Waikato Raupatu Claims Waikato River Settlement Act 2010, provide for the full and final settlement of the historical treaty claims of Ngati Koroki Kahukura and Ngati Haua. I want to begin with a few acknowledgements. First, Ngati Koroki Kahukura. Their settlement would not have been possible without the knowledge and the dedication of their trustees and negotiators. And I, for one, certainly appreciate their willingness to engage with the community and consider alternative and novel options. I acknowledge them and I look forward to working with them as we take this legislation through the House. I also want to acknowledge the hard work, the commitment and perseverance on the part of the Ngati Haua negotiators, most notably the role of the Tumuaki, whose leadership has contributed to the timely success of the settlement. I particularly acknowledge the trustees for their tireless efforts in reaching this day. Mr Speaker, I also acknowledge the claimants who've carried the claims of their tupuna and those who suffered because of the actions and omissions of the Crown. I want to acknowledge particularly those who have passed on without having seen the fruits of their labours. Let me say something about the negotiations. For Ngati Koroki Kahukura, the journey to this first reading has indeed been a challenge. The Crown recognised the mandate on 17 June 2010 and the parties initialled the deed of settlement on 2 November 2012. Following ratification, the deed was signed on 20 December last year. However, there were community concerns about the transfer of Pukeatua Cemetery, one of the sites included in the settlement package. And I particularly acknowledge the gracious actions of Ngati Koroki Kahukura in agreeing to reconsider the redress over the cemetery and to remove the cemetery from the settlement package, and the Crown provided substitute redress to Ngati Koroki Kahukura. The deed to amend outlining this agreement was signed recently. So I really appreciate the willingness of the iwi to agree to changes to their package that allowed the Crown to address these concerns. A novel aspect of the settlement and this bill relates to that beautiful maunga Mongototori, and I refer members to clause 72 and to the definition of te hapuri o Mongototori in clause 71. This is the iwi's ancestral maunga. It's a symbol of Ngati Koroki Kahukura identity. It's provided the iwi with shelter, with protection and sustenance. The local community and other iwi also care greatly for Mongototori. There's a beautiful scenic reserve up there, and I acknowledge the hard work of the community, the farmers up there, in developing this very special reserve over recent years. Their actions have really disclosed a generosity of spirit for their community. As part of the settlement, the Crown acknowledges Ngati Koroki Kahukura's relationship to the maunga, and together, working together, we have developed some special redress affecting it. The bill provides for iwi with customary interests in Mongototori and members of the wider community connected with Mongototori to be named as the registered proprietor for the Mountain Scenic Reserve. The site's scenic reserve classification under the Reserves Act 1977 will remain, and the Waipa District Council will continue to manage the reserve. But I particularly want to thank the negotiators and members of the iwi for the way in which they've approached this issue. A few clauses in a bill in some respects doesn't do justice to the amount of negotiation and the amount of thinking that needed to go into that particular part of the settlement. And I also particularly want to thank Louise Upston, the Chief Whip of my party, for her tremendous contribution. It was over and above what one would expect of a local MP in terms of working closely with me and with all relevant parties to get to a good result. I want to say something, Mr. Speaker, about the Ngati Haua settlement. Toward the end of last year, representatives of the iwi visited the Minister of Finance and me and said that they wanted the treaty equivalent of a rocket docket. They wanted to negotiate the settlement and not mess around, and they wanted to do it within about 6 months. And after they left, my response could have been put up on a TUI advert, yeah, right, because I did not think that it would be possible to achieve a settlement in such a short space of time. In fact, I thought, frankly, it was impossible. I don't know what Mr. English thought. He just wants me to get on with these matters. But I have to say that indeed I was proved wrong. We went from deed of mandate to deed of settlement in 7 months, the fastest time in which a treaty settlement has been achieved. The deed of settlement was recognised in December 2012. The deed of settlement signed on a beautiful day in the Waikato, where you would say that every day is a beautiful day in the Waikato, on 18 June 2013. And without, of course, bringing you into the debate, Mr. Deputy Speaker, can I say how delighted I was that you were with me on that day, because you've always had a particular interest in the settlement. The streamlined settlement is a tremendous achievement. It's a great testimony to the leaders of Ngati Haua, to their clear and pragmatic approach. It should be said that speed is, of course, there's no substitute for getting the thing right, and indeed speed did not mean that the I's weren't dotted and the T's crossed, but it was hard work that's enabled all parties to achieve a just and a durable settlement quickly, and I'm really glad to see a number of those who were involved in those negotiations represented in the gallery today. A key part of their settlement is the vesting of Mongakawa, the ancestral Monga. It's very important to the iwi and New Zealand as the site in the foothills of the first Māori Parliament. The bill provides for the vesting of Mongakawa in Ngati Haua as a scenic reserve with public access maintained. Mr. Speaker, Ngati Haua's rangatira Wiremu Tamihana, year in and year out, sought a constructive and a peaceful relationship with the Crown. On several occasions he petitioned Parliament detailing the events leading up to and during the Waikato Wars, seeking recognition for the harm done to his people and to find a pragmatic way to move forward. His claims were ignored, so today I'm very pleased to stand in this House and work with other members to make amends at the way in which he was treated over a century ago. Mr. Speaker, these settlement bills are now ready to be referred to my friend Mr. Henare and his team on the Māori Affairs Select Committee. I'm sure they're going to address these bills diligently and return them to the House in the very near future. The challenge, of course, will be to return them to the House as quickly in relation to Ngati Haua as it was negotiated, as the deed of settlement was negotiated. And it takes a lot to beat Lance and the team, but I'm sure Toe will give it a really good go.
I call Reno Tirakatini.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker. Ngati Koroki, Kahukura, Ngati Haua, tēnā koutou. Nau mai.